Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. We're going to go into part 3. Please watch part 1 and 2 and you'll see an in-depth analysis of freedom of expression in Islam and the criticism, whether it's tolerated or untolerated, and we compare that same standard against secularists and the Western Hemisphere. In this part, we're going to show you some more criticisms against secularists and the Western Hemisphere, of course, and in this part we're also going to demonstrate against the Christian faith the tolerance, whether it's accepted according to the Bible, and we'll also expose and look into those avenues. But before we do, we'll continue to criticize secularism, and you will see that there are many double standards. And remember what I said, how it's suppressed in the Western Hemisphere, freedom of speech. There is only one tone. You go to any of the secular think tanks, any of the media, the radio shows, the TV shows, you'll always see secularists trying to dominate what is acceptable freedom of speech and what is not. You'll see atheists given all of those platforms, and you'll see majority of them, they all believe that homosexuals should be accepted and tolerated, and it's natural to be a homosexual or a lesbian and so forth. Some other moral issues such as to accept abortions. There's nothing wrong with abortions, you should accept them. So they pretty much dictate what is acceptable and what is not. They will tell you that religion has no influence into the Constitution, so they actually suppress religious thought into the Constitution. Like they'll say, for example, keep religion out of politics. And to me, that is silencing freedom of speech, because if freedom of speech has got some answers to some of the moral issues we need to solve in this country, religion gets no say. So religion is completely shunned into the corner. So notice how they actually claim they respect religious beliefs and people to have different views and to coexist in a multicultural society and system and ethics, but then they say they believe in freedom of speech and laws and systems, yet they discriminate against religious values, and they say that religion has to stay out of politics. That, my friend, is a perfect example of oppression and suppression. You shun religion to God. So if an answer comes in the Bible or the Quran, you basically say, no, that can't interfere into our laws. Can you imagine if religious people did the same thing to secularists? If religious people said to secularists, hey, look, I understand you have all these ideas of same-sex marriages, abortions, gay rights. So if an atheist held such views, such as wanting to promote homosexuality in a religiously dominated political system, and imagine the religious people said, no, keep your beliefs and your ideas in the closet. Can you imagine the intolerance that the atheist community would shun the religious people of having, being so intolerant, not tolerating other people's beliefs and ethics and systems? You'll see this huge condemnation. But when the secularists do the same thing to religious people, apparently we should just suck it up and accept it under freedom of speech, #liberalism and freedom of expression. So notice, this is completely ludicrous and hypocritical. There are more double standards we could discuss. Anti-Islamists will say things like, Muslims keep saying they want to move to Australia for a better way of life, yet when they arrive here, all they want to do is build more mosques and change our way of life to suit them. Well, my response to that is simply that Australia allows diversity. Well, so it claims, right? In one aspect, it shuns religion. It says you can't bring certain religious laws here. But then it says religious freedom is accepted. And I see there's this contradiction there. But then they say, why do you bring your mosques here? I mean, where should we pray? Well, I mean, that's part of our religion. We pray because that's part of our religion in a mosque. Are you saying basically, oh, you can come here, but your religious freedom is taken away from you? Don't build your mosques here. So you see a clear double standards here. I mean, you may argue again and say, oh, look, Muslim countries in places like Saudi Arabia, it doesn't allow it. Well, why do you want to emanate them and become like them? You apparently, unlike them, want to become the bearers of freedom of speech and expression. So if you take away those mosques, how are you any different from the countries you criticize? So it's really hypocritical for them to make such assertions. So they only expose their own true colors when they themselves don't really believe in the freedoms that they preach to the world, but they pretend to be the bearers of truth and the bearers of freedom of speech, which is pretty much condescending if you ask me. As for Muslims trying to impose Sharia on the West, and they say, look, they are part of Australia. They should keep their religion to themselves. They shouldn't try and impose it on the land. But then again, these same Western Enlightenments, they actually came to Australia and imposed their rules and regulations on the native people of this country. So they suppressed it. They overturned, the cultural laws of this land, which was the Aboriginal laws. They overran it by British Anglo-Saxon laws. They impinged upon this culture, set up their own constitutions, and took away their freedoms and told everyone else to adopt their freedoms and their morals and their code and laws and ethics. But then when Muslims come to places like Australia, they are told to keep their religious laws to themselves. And of course, Muslims do not force Sharia upon the non-Muslims in this country. They want to practice amongst themselves, but even that is impinged upon. Even that right is taken away from them. So notice, who are the intolerant people? The people who claim they give religious freedom, yet take those rights away from them. It's amazing when it comes to their double standards. These secularists, they claim they live under a democracy, under a freedom of speech. They try and change their laws, don't they? They go into their systems, they try and change laws, they try and make it better. They sometimes take away old laws, they sometimes introduce new laws. But then if Muslims want to introduce laws and participate in mending those laws, or want to introduce laws that will benefit the Muslims, they say, oh no, you can't change our laws, you can't change our constitution. Yet they are the ones who demand change every day to fix up their laws. So, notice the white policy, notice white privileges. So the secularists can amend laws, yet Muslims who are born and raised in this country, who are citizens of this country, cannot change laws to benefit themselves and possibly the rest of the community. So again, there's another double standards under the freedom of quote. So if you are a white person and if you are a non-Muslim, it's fine for you to get into politics, change laws. But if you're a Muslim, then you're discriminated against. Oh, you're a Muslim, you're trying to change our laws. Oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, you're trying to introduce Sharia into this country to benefit yourself. Oh, no, you can't do that. But then they speak about being tolerant of other religions. And then they make up excuses. Hey, why didn't you just go and live at a Muslim country? So basically, they just want to be like those Muslim countries. They want to be intolerant as they point fingers at other Islamic countries. So the main objective argument here is stop being a double-faced hypocrite when you're making these accusations, yet you yourself do not believe in freedoms. I would like to now narrate a saying from Sheikh Yasir Qadi for the European ban for some of the Islamic laws, just recently that took place, and it goes like this. The European Court of Justice, this is another double standard and hypocrisy exposed from the West when it comes to freedom of speech and expression. The European Court of Justice, the highest court of the European Union, yesterday declared that it was legal for corporations to enforce a ban on all clothing that was of an overtly religious or political nature. Essentially, the equivalent of the Supreme Court of Europe ruled that it is permissible for any company to ban hijabs. Where does one begin with this absurdity of such a ruling? How does one explain that the very civilization that prides itself on freedom and liberty gets so worked up about a piece of cloth on a woman's head? The simple fact of the matter is, despite all of the claims of freedom, there are inherent biases that even European Supreme Court judges are not immune from. It is not religious clothing that they are opposed to, even though that it is the language that is used. It is specifically the hijab, nothing else. All bans are incidental. The ban that will result on Sikh turbans or Jewish yarmulkes are unintended. Collateral damages needed only to provide the veneer of legitimacy to claim that this ban wasn't solely meant for Muslims, women who choose to cover. Had the court ruled to ban immodest clothing, short mini skirts, cleavage showing etc., all of Europe would have been in an uproar. How dare you legislate what a woman may or may not wear? They would loudly proclaim. Yet for a woman to wish to appear modestly and to wish to avert lustful eyes from her persona is somehow an affront to Western sensibilities. Whatever happened to live and let live? It is quite simple really. That they banned the hijab is actually totally understandable. The hijab really truly frightens them. It is a slap on their face given the freedoms they claim to offer women, that a group of women would then choose to turn away from those freedoms and embrace the ultimate freedom of lowering themselves to the laws of the Creator is a rejection of their ideals and values. By choosing to wear the hijab, these sisters actually threaten the masculinity and superiority that many in the West feel. It is in religious terms blasphemy in their eyes, the exact equivalent of zealous fundamentalists not tolerating icons and shrines. Just as shrines seem to contradict perfect monotheism, so too does a woman's modesty apparently contradict the sexual freedom and liberties offered by Western societies. So for champions of such freedoms, the hijab is an affront that cannot be tolerated. Frankly, I personally would have much less of a problem if their hatred were explicit. If they were to say we wish to ban the hijab because we are a bunch of sexist, chauvinist Islamophobes, that would actually be so blunt as to not really elicit much of a response from me. To you be your way and to me mine, and God willing, God will judge between us at the end. But what irritates me to the no end is the hypocritical claim of upholding freedom and liberty, the notion that somehow ideals of individual choices and personal liberties are sacred and inviolable in the society as long as no one else is harmed. No, dear Europe, this is not just true. Stop pretending that you are bastions of liberty and freedom. Cases like these and the utter lack of outcry generated clearly demonstrate the sheer hypocrisy and falsehood of these claims. Liberalism, it appears, can only tolerate a spectrum of liberals. Otherwise, liberalism is just as illiberal as religious fundamentalism. But at least the fundamentalists are honest with you about what they allow and what they don't. That's by respected Sheikh Yasir Ghadi. That further illustrates the hypocrisy of the Western standards when it comes to the bearers of torches for freedom of expression and liberalization. Of course, Islamophobes will make the excuse that some Muslim men actually oppress women by forcing them to wear the hijab, and it's that force that they're trying to remove. However, this notion is clearly disproven because there are Muslim women who actually admit choosing to wear the hijab as their personal choice, which clearly debunks their notion that they're just trying to remove an oppressive garment, which is absolutely debunked and refuted. They have no argument against it. So in the future, I'm willing to do a part also exposing the Bible and Christianity when it also comes to certain freedoms. So please pay attention to that. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Please subscribe and spread the videos.